How's it going, fellow reefers? As always, God bless you. Thank you for being here. I'm Gage, and this is Candy Coral Aquatics. If you're new to my channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, tap that notification bell. This is where I talk about all things reefing, but more importantly, where I share the information I've gathered on my tank with you guys to help you become better hobbyists at the hobby we call reefing. Today, guys, very simply, it's going to be part 2 of our Beginner's Guide Aquarium series, and this is going to be deemed the, quote, ugly phase. So, while you guys are cycling your tank, one of the very first stages that you're going to come across is diatoms. So diatoms are the brown kind of stuff that gets on the rockwork and the sand. Another very likely thing that will happen is you guys will get some sort of algae. It's natural, it's completely normal, and it's part of the cycling process. So when you're first cycling your tank, there isn't anything in the water to absorb the nutrients. So typically corals will actually absorb the nutrients out of the water, and it does help to prevent algae growth and then thus giving the coral nutrition. But when you don't have any corals in the tank because you're still cycling your system, it doesn't take many nutrients at all to have a bloom of some type of algae. Like right now, you can see I actually have a bloom of green hair algae. I did a phosphate test and I did a nitrate test, and they both came back at 0. So the amount of nitrates and phosphates that I have in this tank are probably very, very low, but it is just enough to start to grow algae. It doesn't take much to grow algae when there's absolutely nothing in the tank to absorb the nutrients, like if there was corals in here. So if you're like me and you start to get an algae bloom, it's perfectly normal. Don't freak out. Don't throw everything in the trash and think that you've lost. It is perfectly normal. It's probably going to happen. So let's talk about stock that we have in the tank currently. You guys know about the 2 clownfish that I added, the golden nuggets. Right there, you can see the female in her flower pot. The male is, I don't think you guys can see him, but he's actually just on the other side of the pot. She's still showing quite a bit of aggression towards him, which I'm not very happy about because they were a bonded pair. That's how I purchased them. Unless they lied about that. But I don't know, maybe it's still kind of that acceptance pecking order thing. But she dominates that pot. And when I put food into the aquarium, she kind of pushes him around a little bit, but I'm making sure that he's still getting fed. So hopefully they will accept each other more so. You can actually kind of see him swimming around through that hole in the back. But we'll see how it goes. All right, new addition. So because I have this green hair algae in the tank, obviously we need to get it under control, right? Because as we're adding livestock, the nutrients are going to go up. So we want to make sure that the little bit of nutrients that are in there that's feeding this algae growth, we get rid of the algae that is growing, and hopefully just completely prevent any more from growing. So over on the right hand side of the tank, you can see our newest addition. Let me go ahead and tilt the camera just a little bit. This is a lawnmower blenny. It also goes by the name sailfin blenny, jeweled blenny, but most often it is referred to as an algae eating blenny or a lawnmower blenny. There he is right there. There's a little piece of green algae right in front of his face. There we go, there he is. Really cool little fish, great personality, and they have an absolutely ferocious appetite when it comes to algae. So much so that you actually have to make sure that you have algae either growing in your tank, which right now I do, and then once the algae has been devoured, you need to supplement their diet with some type of a nori sheet. So I picked up some green algae sheets today. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about him. We just added him to the tank, and based on everything that I've read, they're supposed to be pretty ferocious when it comes to eating algae. I was a little bit hesitant at first because my main go-to for algae control has always been like a foxface or like a tamini tang or a yellow tang, or even, actually, believe it or not, a coral beauty angelfish does a good job too. And for the most part, they are reef safe. But, again, people swear up and down that these things will just devour algae. And I guess you don't get a name like lawnmower blenny unless that is something that you're doing is just cutting through the algae. So we'll keep an eye on him and see exactly if he lives up to his name or not. My 4-year-old son decided that we were going to call this fish Pickle. So this is Pickle, my lawnmower blenny. Now we've got 2 more additions to the tank, which I'm going to add here momentarily. Let me just back this out 1 second. Okay, The other additions that we have are up here acclimating right now, and they are to lyretale anthias. We have a male and a female, so they've been getting along great in the bag. When I picked them up at the aquarium shop, I asked them, I said, how long have they been a pair, let's call it, because they were in the same tank together. One was male, one was female, and they were listed kind of like as a pair. And they said, well, in their store, 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, but they're thinking they probably have been together longer than that. They do have a 6 week quarantine process. So they'd at least been, or I'm sorry, it's not a 6 week, I think it's a 3 week quarantine. And then they had moved them and they'd been in the display tanks for an additional 3 weeks. So approximately 6 to 7 weeks they'd been together at that shop as well. So anthias, kind of like clownfish, one will develop into the male, whereas in clownfish, one develop into the female, and the female is dominant. In the lyretale anthias, the male is dominant. So we have one female and one male. So I'm going to go ahead and add them to the tank right now for you guys. Give me just 1 second here. All right, there we go. Let's see how this clownfish is going to take to her new friends. Hopefully she'll be fine with it, but let's see here. Maroon clowns tend to be pretty territorial and aggressive, but I'm hoping everybody's going to get along great. We'll see how it goes. But anyways, there we go, guys. So a couple of lyretale anthias. Beautiful, beautiful fish. Now the one with the highest dorsal fin and or spike, I guess you could call it, right there swimming back towards the algae blenny, that is the male, I've come to understand. And the other one, of course, is the female. Looks like they're saying hi. Gonna have to see how this goes because maroons can be pretty territorial, but supposedly anthias can as well. It does look like they're following each other around, sticking close to one another. So yeah, hopefully everybody will get along nicely. All right, guys, so let's get back, I guess, kind of on topic. We kind of went off topic there for a second, and I apologize. So ugly stage of a tank, things to expect and to watch out for, and just be mindful of. Algae. So as you can see, I have that green hair algae outbreak that we were talking about just momentarily. Perfectly normal. It happens. It does not take many nutrients whatsoever to cause an algae bloom. Like I said before, especially when there isn't anything in the water like corals to be soaking up those nutrients. So what can you do about it? Well, you can go in and you can manually remove the algae. That's probably a better bet. I mean, that's your best bet if you don't want to add a utilitarian fish, such as a tang or a blenny, something like that. That's actually going to eat the algae actively. You can add cleanup crews such as snails and crabs. I was going to say shrimp, but I don't mean shrimp. Hermit crabs, emerald crabs. Emerald crabs will go after bubble algae. So if you have bubble algae, emerald crabs might help you out. Turbo snails are a good pick. Hermit crabs can do an okay job. But personally, I found the most luck with some sort of a utilitarian fish. Like I mentioned before, a foxface or a tang. And we're going to be trying out this lawnmower blenny. So what do you do if you don't have algae? What are some other things that you can come across? You can come across red slime. Red slime it's like it's a bacteria, so to speak. And there's actually I don't know if it's exactly like a cyanobacteria but I think that's what it is. It's like a cyanobacteria. But they do make a chemical, I believe it's called ChemiClean, that you can add to the water that will actually rid you of that red slime kind of gunky stuff. It's not really an algae. Like I said, it's like a bacteria. I have used it in the past on other people's tanks. Like I had a buddy who had set up a tank and he was going through the cycling process and he developed that red slime. And you'll know that you have it because it really is like this red carpet of gunk that just covers your sand bed and your rocks. But like I said, that ChemiPure, or not, it's not ChemiPure, sorry, ChemiClean, I think is what it's called. We'll get rid of it. Just go ahead and Google red slime because I can't remember 100% what the name of the product is. I've never personally had red slime myself, but it is very easy to get away from. Also, if you're getting a lot of diatoms, you might want to check your nutrient levels. So make sure that you have a test kit. Things that you should be testing for are phosphates, nitrates, nitrites, and ammonias. Now, I did not test for ammonia or nitrite, which I will tell you guys, if you're not experienced at this, that is a no-no. You should be testing for that. However, I added the clownfish first, which are, again, a pretty resilient fish. And then I didn't add anything else for a while after that. So I'm fairly confident that my nitrate levels, or excuse me, my ammonia levels are zero now. I'm willing to bet that I'm just beyond that cycling process where I don't have to worry about that any longer. I have not seen any symptoms in my clownfish of, telling me otherwise, that I have high nitrites or ammonias. My phosphate levels were zero. My nitrate levels were also zero. But like I said before, at the beginning of the video, it doesn't take very many nutrients at all to grow algae. So diatoms, let's talk about diatoms. So the brown sand, it can be on your sand, it can be on the rockwork, it can be on the glass. Again, a very normal part of a cycling process. If you're finding that you're having an excess amount of these diatoms, like you can see a little bit of brown diatoms in my sand, not much. My biggest issue is this green hair algae outbreak. But if you're finding that you're not having the algae, but you're having a ton of diatoms, what you can do is actually turn your lights off completely on your tank. Even if you have fish in there, it's not going to matter. You can turn your lights off completely and cover up your tank, like the sides of the tank, not the top, but like the sides of the glass, the best that you can in order to prevent any light from coming into the tank. Diatoms will grow very quickly in a well-lit environment. So same thing with dinoflagellants, diatoms and dinoflagellants, I believe is what it's called, something like that. It kind of looks like dinos, but it's like really bubbly and it's far more slimy. But stuff like that will actually grow a lot faster if it's a well-lit aquarium. So turn your lights off. If you have natural sunlight coming into the room, try to cover the sides of the glass so no light can get into it. Leave it that way for about 3 or 4 days, and then check on it. And I'm willing to bet most of your problem, if not all of it, depending on how much you have, will be gone. You can do a water change after that. Just because there's going to be some die-off of organic material, it might be a good idea to do a water change. If you're still continuing to have problems, like let's say you run your tests, your things you should be testing for, ammonia, nitrite, nitrates, and phosphates. Let's say you have no nitrite, you have no ammonia, and let's say you're showing no phosphates and even no nitrates, but you're still having issues with, say, diatoms or with red slime or algae. A couple things to keep in mind. Just because your testing kit says that you have zero nutrients in the water doesn't actually mean that you have zero. So if you have algae of any kind, there is some nutrients in the water. But remember, guys, especially with things like green hair algae, and when there's no coral in the tank to absorb any nutrients, I mean quite literally like 2 or 3 parts of nitrate and like 0.03 of phosphate, like real low phosphates, can still grow algae because there's nothing else out competing the algae. Once you put corals into the tank, the corals will actually outcompete the algae for the nutrients that's in the water, and your algae will go away as long as you're not like overfeeding your tank heavily. But if you're still having issues and you don't believe it's related to nutrient issues as far as what you're personally adding to the tank, what is the next step? If you don't have a protein skimmer, I highly suggest that you get one. I'll show you guys what mine's been pulling out here momentarily. But besides that, even first is going to be your water itself. So you cannot have, and I'll say it again, you cannot have a successful reef tank unless you have reverse osmosis deionized water, okay, RODI water. You're going to either want to buy this from a local fish store, and if you do, I highly suggest that you bring your own TDS meter and you actually test their water before you buy it. Because if it's a big box fish store and they're filling up hundreds of gallons, of water, they're out pumping that every day to different people, the membranes and filters can, deteriorate rather quickly. So I highly suggest you take a TDS meter with you and actually check your local fish store's water supply before you buy it from them. But really, guys, just spend the money. Go to bulkreefsupply.com. I am not sponsored by anybody, but I do suggest Bulk Reef Supply. I've bought lots of stuff from their website, and it's all great products. I've never had a problem. And just pick yourself up a 3 or a 4 stage reverse osmosis deionizing unit. I picked one up. I actually have a video of it. I just haven't uploaded it yet, so I'll upload it soon for you guys so you can see mine. But I'm pumping I can pump. If I wanted to, I could easily pump out 100 gallons a day, no problem, out of that thing. It comes with its own TDS meter, and I can see that it's actually testing 0 TDS. So the point that I'm making is if you don't have a good, clean source of water, like you actually don't have a source of water that is coming up as 0 TDS, that is going to contribute quite substantially, believe it or not, to your nuisance algae problems. Or it's going to continue to contribute quite substantially to the amount of nutrients that you have in your water. If you're using dirty water, you guys are never going to have a clean aquarium, okay? So just make sure that your water is of the best quality. Next thing is check your salt that you're using. Don't buy super cheap salt, okay? Because super cheap salt tends to have contaminants in it. It's just how it is. The refinery process isn't as great as some of your more expensive salts. But you don't also have to break the bank. I suggest Red Sea Blue Bucket. That's what I've used for the last couple of years, and it works phenomenal in my opinion. And what I like about Red Sea is each bucket has its own number on it that you can actually look up online, and it'll tell you specifically what's in that exact bucket. So it's kind of cool that they offer that. But I find Red Sea to be fairly inexpensive. Like for instance, if you pick up a bucket that's, I want to say it's a 75-gallon bucket, it's probably going to run you maybe $30. So it's really not that expensive, and it's a good quality salt. So let's take a look at the protein skimmer. I do want to show you guys what mine's been pulling out here. So you can see there, if you're not running a protein skimmer, you absolutely should be. You can see all the gunk that's been pulling out. And like I said, this stuff is nasty. And before, the only thing I had in here, guys, was these 2 clownfish. And there's no way that these 2 clownfish are making all that waste, right? So there is a lot of stuff going on in the water as your tank is cycling. Biodiversity is happening. Some things, what's the word I'm looking for here? Your bacteria in your tank some of it's going to die, some of it's going to reproduce. When you're feeding the fish, even though I just have 2 clownfish in here, there's a lot going on in the water chemistry, which we'll get into more in a later video. But the point that I'm making is even when you just have rock, sand, and clean water, you can actually still pull out organics. Okay, before I had any fish in here at all, it was just rock, sand, and water. I was still pulling out a little bit of brown water. So there is still some type of organic material through this cycling process, because as you add your rock, not all the bacteria and little critters that are in that live rock survive, right? Some stuff does die, and it doesn't take much to pollute the water. So definitely invest in a protein skimmer if you haven't already. So yeah, guys, so that's what's going on with my tank. Wee bit of an algae outbreak. If you guys are having similar issues, don't fret. It's no big deal. It's perfectly normal. And within, a week or so, it should just take care of itself, especially if you're getting in there and manually removing it, keeping an eye on your nutrient levels, your nitrates, and your phosphates. And then if you guys actually plan on adding some type of utilitarian fish, like a lawnmower, blenny, a tang, a foxface, coral beauty, angelfish will actually eat algae as well. Something like that, you guys are going to have good results. If you guys have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. This really was, I guess, more of a, hey, let's talk about what I'm adding to the tank than a part 3. But we squeezed in the part 3 It's that ugly stage. There's not really much to talk about during the ugly stage other than my tank's ugly. Just make sure you're keeping your nitrates and phosphates under control, and understand that if you do have algae growth, even though your test kits say that you don't have nitrates and phosphates, you do have a little bit in the water, and that's why the algae is growing. So until next time, guys, take care, God bless, and thank you for being here.